Alright, so here we are with our, what I call a rat rod project. It's our B2000. I believe this is an 86. We've set up our batteries to look somewhat like a V8 engine, which this was my wife's original idea on her 56 F500 pickup. So I'm copying that. The interesting thing with this vehicle, I did the conversion on this probably, I think it was before 2000. One of my, where in the town I used to live, I was friends with a washing machine repair guy, and he was going to use this for his business. The interesting thing, as I'm looking back, this motor here, I had gotten two of these motors a few years before. One to go in a project for St. Lucie Battery, and the other was my pay for doing the project. So, so this project here has got a lot of the old electric car parts before 2000. And this motor in particular, this motor was around before the Net Gain series motor. Net Gain came around and did a copy of this motor, except they did a few improvements for electric cars. Some bigger brushes and some other little improvements, and they became the electric car hobbyist supplier of the series motor. But before they were in business, this was the motor. So he has a little bit of history that way. Of course, we also have the Zilla controller, which was came out, I'm not exactly sure the year, but it was a high-powered, high-voltage controller that became very popular. This has kind of been the standard by which other series controllers are judged. It's got a lot of features like a battery or motor current adjustment that you just set from your Palm Pilot. And also rev sensor and a bunch of other things. Very controls the main contactor so that if it thinks there's some kind of problem going on, a short in the controller or something, it'll open the contactor. If you over rev the motor, well, it doesn't open the contactor, it shuts it down. It also does the pre-charge and everything else. So it was quite a step forward with us. That's called the hairball. And one of his ideas, the guy that came up with this, and that really shows some thinking, is this is the part that the person connects to. The 12-volt battery, the throttle, the contactor, all the stuff that you need to connect to talk to the power unit, which is that one, goes through this. So if you do something wrong, like hook up your 12-volt battery backwards or whatever, you won't burn out everything. You'll just burn out this guy right here, which is easy to replace compared to the power unit. So by having the two units being separate, that was one of his things that he did to. The guy was really quite ahead of his time. I think Otmar was one of our unsung heroes in the electric car world. You don't hear much about him nowadays. Everything is Tesla or whatever. But at the time, he changed the world for us. So on we go. Now, one thing I found on this car right here is that it still has my original cables. And back at that time, I was using copper pipe and pounding it together and soldering it. And even though these cables are probably more than 18 years old, they still are doing pretty good. So I'm going to keep them in here, even though I prefer the crimp cables now. They're easier, quicker, and whatnot. But the fact that these are that old and were handmade at the time is another reason to keep them. Of course, we'll put heat shrink over that just like we did on these. These are all cables from that time too. So trying to keep as much of the old time stuff as possible. And I'm getting a little excited about this, so I might just throw some wires on so I can get a little ride. Oh, let me take a shot of the back. This was, because this was done in the day when we had lead acid batteries. Our back racks, I've now osmoed them because they did have some rust. I've cut out the dividers for the golf cart batteries so that we can drop our lithium batteries right in there. And back then we had what was the tilt bed, which made it easy to tilt it up and get the and I noticed right here just while talking that the old Grassroots EV website, this was a company that I kind of helped start, let them have my name, and he made a website and was selling parts for a while. I think this was around 2000. I believe the website is still up, but they're not doing much. I say they're not doing much. I don't think they're doing anything. But another start there that did a lot of good at the time.